to take you through the morning papers. With me this morning to review them are the UK editor of The Big Issue, Paul McNamee, and entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle. So, very good morning to both of you. Good to see you both. Plenty to talk about, let's face it, after yesterday's so-called mini-budget. Kate, you've picked out the Financial Times' front page to talk about this. I mean, there was nothing mini about it, was there? There was so much in this statement. How's the FT treating it?
Yes, good morning. I think we've got a budget here that is going to have certainly a Marmite reaction to it, and I think it's important for us to cover all of the front pages and the different dynamics of that. What our Chancellor said, that he was looking for economic growth above every other priority, and they are quite proudly suggesting that they have achieved this with the cut in income tax, stamp duty, cut in national insurance, cut in business taxes, the additional rate abolished, and also that alcohol duty frozen. And the FT's take on this is twofold. First and foremost, that the impact this has had on the markets, whilst our Chancellor has said the markets aren't really that important, they shift all of the time, in that he isn't going to pay too much attention to that. This is about a big gamble, and he's going to make the stakes heard and known. They are pulling out the fact that he has appeased and achieved a lot of positivity for a lot within the business sector. There's quite a cheeky commentary done by Helen Thomas there that talks about this as the city is back, and that this is certainly about the rich being in love with the rich again. And I think many will probably attest to that, because this is very much about how to get the market going again, get things moving again, get the economy going again by that gamble in terms of investment back in. And the devil's always in the detail, and we will see in time, certainly with his further measures that we're expecting in the new year, how a lot of this borrowing is actually going to be achieved.
Yeah, but looking at that graph on the front page, the pound falling by 3%, obviously some nervousness in the markets about what he's announced. And Paul, let's take a look at the Guardian's take on it as well. They pick out the fact that it's the rich who have benefited the most from what's been announced.
Yes, and as this is an ideological budget, although not a budget, we are told it doesn't come as a surprise that people ideologically distant from the current administration will go with this particular angle. And you're right to say a budget for the rich, and some of the language is picking apart the problems they see in the Chancellor's statement. They're calling it reckless, high risk, and one thing that really jumps out is that it is class war, which is quite an emotive phrase. And it is hard to argue with that, because I suppose it doesn't matter what the Chancellor was announcing around help for people with energy bills or any of those mass bits of borrowing to help consumers, because of this £150,000 high rate of tax for those earning £150,000 and over has been abolished, and it means that there's much more brass in pocket for the super wealthy. That's all that people are going to see. Also, because there's no forecasts attached to it, because it's so intensely speculative. It's like you or I saying, well, look, I'm going to boost the economy by 3%, 4%, 5%, and anybody says, well, how are you going to do it? Say, don't worry about that. I'm just going to do it. It's going to cost billions. So that sense of no detail, yet this reckless abandonment and this desire to stimulate the economy is one that comes through in The Guardian. And I suppose the other point here is that what this administration is doing is pretending they haven't been involved in the previous 12 years of Conservative rule that has led to this point of stagnation.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And Kate, the government seems to be unapologetic about the fact that the rich are going to be better off as a result of this. But Kwasi Kwarteng did say that he thought it was fair because they were reducing taxes right across income brackets. And their argument is that we desperately need growth, that growth's been stagnating. They need to do something radically different, and continuing to raise taxes wasn't going to work. That's their view, isn't it?
I think the mood music was set before this announcement in terms of where they were going to position this. Absolutely agree and concur with the idea of the devil is in the detail. We've got to see how this is going to be achieved. It is absolutely easy to go out with lots of speculative claims about how you're going to spend the economy, but we need to understand the level of borrowing and what's going to be done going to achieve that. But the business sector in general is feeling appeased by this. They're feeling that there is an understanding that there is challenges, and if we don't almost fight fire with fire, we're not going to achieve what they want from this. We're not going to be able to get that stimulation that the economy needs. But that doesn't mean, confidence breeds confidence, and a lot of consumers are going to feel even more exposed than ever before here. And we've mentioned as well the effect that's had on the markets. The economy is judged by international players as well, and a former Treasury Secretary, Larry Summers, was saying that he felt that we were behaving like an emerging market with this, that there was a naivety almost to it. So I think with the Telegraph, we've got a comment from the editor, Alistair Heath, saying he thinks it's the greatest budget that he's seen. I think many will feel quite the opposite of that this morning.
Well, yes, as you say, Alistair Heath giving it the thumbs up there on the Telegraph, but even in their main headline, they use the word gamble, don't they, which is interesting from the Telegraph. The Daily Mail, however, Paul, completely positive. I can't see a negative word on their front page, and they say, at last, a true Tory budget.
Yes, and unsurprising that it's so flag-waving for the new Conservative government and what they're coming up with. It does beg the question, what do you think was going on with the previous budgets when you were supporting them and saying that they were doing the right thing? That's for the Mail to answer, I suppose. One thing though, when you get beneath that headline, there are some elements, and tonally it's not quite as triumphal, because they say things like MPs in the markets were stunned, which we know they were. You've just mentioned how the pound has dropped. It said the idea is boosting GDP after years of stagnation. So there is an admission that what had happened before wasn't doing any particular good. While it looks like that it couldn't be any more positive, I think that there is perhaps a little more circumspection than we normally associate with the Mail when it goes full tub thumping.
Yeah, interesting, and interesting to see what the coverage is like inside as well. No doubt there'll be pages and pages inside all these papers with lots of different angles covered. I know that we'll return to this. We're talking about it all morning, one way or another, but let's just get in a couple of other stories, shall we, while we've got you here. Front page of the Telegraph. Let's take another look at it, because some people might have spotted the photograph there. And Kate, this is actually, which is quite interesting, the first official photograph of King Charles. I think we've seen so many images of him, haven't we, over the past week or so, of course, but this is the first official photograph of him at work. What do you make of it?
I think what's poignant in the shot is the red box, because even those of us who aren't fully aware of how it all works, we know the red box is the briefing document piece that comes in every morning. And I think this is in for business type shot. It's suggesting that it was taken in the 18th century room at Buckingham Palace and shows His Majesty the King carrying out official government duties from the King's red box. So I think this is a suggestion and a statement that this is somebody now ready to deliver on the promises made.
Well, yes, and it's interesting how attention shifts, isn't it, Paul? I mean, we've now got a huge financial statement to get capturing our attention after a week of a health announcement and this new government that's just come in, and already King Charles perhaps fading in the background of people's minds when he's been so prominent for such obvious reasons.
It has been such an astoundingly huge number of days since Liz Truss was elected, because if you think about it, within a short period of time there was a new Prime Minister, there was a multi-billion-pound intervention to help people's fuel bills, yet those two things were not even the biggest story of that week, because the Queen died and then everything that followed from there. Have people forgotten that Charles has taken over? I'm sure he's not going to let them forget, but it is remarkable that if all of that stuff that happened in just days ago is now feeling like it's some moment in the past, and now we're moving on, and Charles is posing for these pictures to make it look as though he's really going to get stuck in and get things done. Is he? We don't know. Is he going to be the interventionist king? Is he going to do more than the Queen? I'd like to think he will. I think it'd be interesting if he got his hands dirty, got stuck in.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, won't it? And Paul, I know you wanted to talk about the front page of The Sun. Interestingly, Kwasi Kwarteng's tax cuts make a small column at the side, and their main headline is devoted to Meghan. Very quickly, sorry, I've just been told we've not got much time.
Okay, it baffles me. It baffles me why this intense dislike and attack on Meghan above everything else carries on. It just leaves me scratching my head, shaking my head, thinking you need to move on.
Okay, and we need to move on actually, so that's rather decent timing there. Paul McNamee and Kate Hardcastle, I'll see you again in the next hour, but for the moment, thanks both very much indeed. All the top stories coming up next.